All right. So the rest is all about Energy Consortium and the activities we do. But I thought we'll kickstart with a panel discussion on the platforms that we can build to scale impact, to scale technologies from research to implementation. So I'd like to invite my co-panelist to the dais, Mirik Gogri from Spectrum Impact, Raghuttama Rao from GDC, Ajeya Bandyopadhyay from IFC, and Nishani Manohar from IITMAA. Welcome. The other one, and that corner. Welcome, Ajay. Yes, right next to me. All right, so while they're taking their place, this is the apologies. So this translational activity, we've been talking about this all 2 days, and we've been hearing about many people who try to take research and technology out of lab to market, but it's a very vexing problem, which kind of has solutions that we need to come at it from multiple angles. So at the Energy Consortium, one of the ways by which we are trying to address it is by creating a platform where we have multiple industries who come together as founding members, who is currently supporting us through membership funding, but also supporting us more importantly through deployment opportunities for some of the technologies we develop. And we've also tried to build startups out of the research we do by working with faculty and bringing in seasoned builders. We've set up the venture studio. Some of these activities are ongoing. While this happens at one university, but the broader challenge that we have already faced is to understand it from a customer perspective, where GDC or Gopalakrishna Deshpande Center have been spearheading this effort to evangelize and help translate research from lab to market. I think the part of the ecosystem doesn't stop here. We also have Nishani, who's been part of IIT Madras Alumni Association, but the consortium itself was made possible by contributions from some of the alumni to set up such an initiative, which then allowed us to kickstart some of the platform building activities. So, and it doesn't stop there. We generally have the ways in which we work with alumni, either through their time, their expertise, sometimes their contributions as well, to help some of the research that we do translate. And of course, IFC is quite well known for supporting climate action, and Ajay has been supporting many such initiatives from a profile I had seen. So probably I'll request the panelists to do a quick introduction about the organization, yourself, the organization, and how do we envision a platform that helps this turning academic research into industry implementation, and more so the elements that the platform should contain to make it repeatably. So this IIT Madras can be one example, but if we really need to scale this across the country, this has to be a replicable model. So maybe I start with Raghu and then go on to the rest of the panelists.
Yeah, thank you, Satya. Good afternoon. My name is Raghuttama Rao. I work with the Gopalakrishna Deshpande Center. Very quickly, what GDC does is we work with faculty, researchers, and scientists, who work on STEM research. For the most part, they are publishing, and that's their dharma, right? Many of them are also teaching. And patenting is one can I say, step forward, but that's not commercialization. Less than 1% of research in this country actually gets commercialized. It's a very, even 1% is I would say an overestimation. So the mission of GDC really is to see what is it that fundamentally prevents it from happening. We have 1,260 incubators and counting, right? So there's no shortage of incubators. There's no shortage of money. What is the real problem? The real problem that we feel is right at the outset of where research and who's doing research. There is a gap between TRL 2 and 3. That's where research really ends and kind of starts getting into the real world. And when commercial money comes in, that's somewhere around 6 or 5, maybe 6 or 7, which is where you start smelling revenues. So this valley of death, you're predominantly funded by government grants or university money or whatever that be. So how is it that you can accelerate the development of scientific research into something that is more commercially acceptable and palatable? That is where GDC works. So the question that Satya asked, what can be done for a platform, as a platform that is scalable? GDC is one way in which it happens. This inspiration came from Dr. Deshpande, one of our co-sponsors, our fundamental sponsors, who funded this in the US with the National Science Foundation, less than 15 years back. So it's not that we are far behind. So it's worked in the US, scaled to about 300 universities, and that's a model that we got inspired by. We have gone to 150 universities and incubators and 300 incubators in this country, besides IIT Madras. DST has partnered with us, and we are expecting another couple of national bodies to work with us to see how we can scale it further. So I would stop at that and maybe take up more as we go along.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Satya, for inviting me. I am Ajeya. I'm leading the energy transition and industrial decarbonization program for International Finance Corporation in Asia, focusing on South Asia as well as the East Asia Pacific. So many of you would be knowing that International Finance Corporation is the private sector development arm of the World Bank Group. And we are closely working with various other World Bank Group entities, which are IBRD and multilateral investment guarantee agencies. So as per our latest energy policy, we do engage with the emerging nations and the developing countries, giving them the flexibility to use the different sources of energy so that it's sustainable, affordable, and reliable, and which ultimately helps in creating jobs and uplifting the social and the economic status of the people in the emerging economies. So in that construct, the decarbonization and energy transition, of course, plays a very important role, not only ensuring the energy transition, but also giving the industry a tool for competitiveness, which today we understand is something is of utmost importance when industries are actually competing in a situation or in a geo-economic and geopolitical uncertainty. One way to look at is to directly engage with the large corporates, which we have been doing traditionally, but we also understand that there is a dire need for taking new innovations to these big players, be the large steel players or cement companies, large chemical companies. So we are trying out the various models, and even in India, and I think this is the very right time this discussion is happening, that how through various shapes and forms we can bring new innovation from the lab, from the pilot scale to the scalable innovation. And that's where we are also, in fact, experimenting or piloting with various investment model and the financial instruments, which can essentially de-risk some of these innovations and help industry to quickly absorb and scale those innovations. So I will stop here, and later on we'll participate in the detailed discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajeya. Nishani.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, Professor Satya, Narsi, and happy to share the stage with all of you here today. So I'm Nishani Manohar, and I head operations of the IIT Madras Alumni Association. IIT Madras over the last 10 years has now been an IRF #1, which is a very proud moment for all of us. And what primarily the Alumni Association does is engage with the diverse alumni over the number of decades. We have about 7 to 8 decades that we've been, since we founded, and help them engage with one another in different ways. One of the most important ways we engage with alumni is to contribute to the institute at large. I think what has worked, and answering Professor Satya's question for us, is the way the whole ecosystem is built between the IIT Madras, the research park, the fundraising office, the different centers of excellence that we have, and the Alumni Association, and how it all comes together towards solving problems we have here today. I think primarily the Alumni Association is able to contribute in the three main ways, which is time, talent, and treasure. And here itself we have different examples which I'll come to later. But what we have been doing at IITMAA in short form for the Alumni Association is sort of bringing out what IIT Madras and the different centers over here are doing so that alumni is well aware of how they can contribute and what ways the institute and the centers want them to contribute in. So we have a mentoring program that works. We have alumni to alumni mentoring. We also have a lot of alumni mentoring the centers of excellence over here in giving their time, their talent, and the amazing international experience that they all come with in different ways that they can apply in projects and programs that there are here today. Talent, large pool of the alumni globally, 60 plus alumni all over the world in every industry that you can possibly think of. The centers are able to tap into this talent pool and use it effectively, creating a co-creation hub on campus rather than having organizations just put in money, but the whole hub itself is here, which involves the organization, professors, researchers, and the alumni community. I think we already have Raghu here, who's an alum who is now pioneering work as a CEO at the GDC Center. Dr. Deshpande, an alum as well, who's contributed heavily to GDC. We have Narsi over here, who is an alum himself, contributing to the Energy Consortium. And these are just some examples of how powerful the alumni are and the ways that they can contribute apart from just, funding some centers. So yeah, and of course, fundraising is a treasure. We've different methods to do so, not just a blindfolded system transfer that you have, but also having the methodology to track where your funds are, what impact it has created for India, for the world, how it has aligned to national policies that we have today, or local policies that is, and the way that the community, allowing them to test waters before actually plunging into this whole big framework. I think the whole system having a blended financing model is also what's sort of working over here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishani. And I agree, alumni had supported, but it doesn't have to only be alumni. We are now increasingly working with corporates, philanthropic organizations, and individuals who also want to support the effort, because in our country, I think there is lots of capital, but also there is dearth of capital. Lots of capital once the company becomes formed and they are maturing and scaling. But dearth of capital when you want to really experiment, and I would like to call upon Mirik, who himself is an alumnus of IIT Bombay. He has supported and set up the Gogri Hub for membrane research, for fundamental research on a topic like membrane, which most of us don't even recognize is how important it is, right from water purification to the batteries that works, to many more activities. Maybe Mirik can share his thoughts and also about what he's now trying to set up to evangelize this action. He's a man of action. He doesn't only donate, but also looks at how do you build these ecosystems. So, Mirik?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the invite for this panel. And again, just a brief, I wear multiple hats. One of the hat is part of the promoter family of a large-scale chemical manufacturing company. So there is a lot of experience on industry where I lead our R&D and technology efforts. So I actually know where the value of death occurs, where we are standing on the TRL 8 side waiting for something, and the giver is at TRL 3, and we have no idea how do you catch the innovation. And that's something that really struck with me in terms of if India really needs to progress, this value of death needs to be solved for in multiple ways. I think it's not only one sort of tool that we need to figure out. In that regards, our family looked at the space of the membranes, and we said, look, the TRL 4 to 7 gap in membranes, like so many things in India, is very real. And what we realized is there is a lot of talk that, look, there is so much infrastructure already put there in the universities and things like that. But when we delved a little deeper, a lot of this infra is not relevant for the value of death. And what we want to really look at is are the critical gaps. And the whole funding that we have also been given is for filling the critical gaps where an idea which is stuck at TRL3, with say mentorship from GDC and everything, if someone wants to then take it to the next level, they have access to some of these right machines to then take it to the next level. And we are also evolving that concept. So after this membrane center, which hopefully should be ready in a couple of months, the idea has now grown to almost like the platform approach that is a part of this panel, that we want to create a platform. It's called the India Translational Research Initiative, where we are actually talking to not only IIT Bombay or IIT Madras, we are talking to 15, 20 top universities and institutes in India across the board, and trying to understand where is this critical gap in the TRL 4 to 7 value of death. And again, in some cases it may be an infra gap, in some cases it may be a mindset or a cultural gap, in some cases it may be some other gap, whether it's connecting to the customers. And we are trying to then figure out what is the right way to solve that. In fact, we have already done something in the biopharma space with UDCT, or now ICT, and there we are doing something around building the right CGMP facilities for vaccines or mRNA therapeutics and things like that. Again, these are some of the gaps that we, once you are there in the ecosystem, you start to realize that if this can get unlocked, they can be leveraged into so much more. And in fact, we are in discussion with GDC themselves in terms of figuring it out, how we can work together. So that's another point. I think one of the aspects is there will be strengths of a lot of institutes which are there in the system. And I think the how do we collaborate together becomes an important point. I know collaboration is generally a thrown away word in terms of every panel, but I think it's important that we figure out a way to collaborate a lot of the strengths of the institutes which are trying to work on this value of death, and that becomes very, very crucial. And obviously I was in IIT Madras, and I definitely look at so many opportunities and the brilliant ecosystem already developed here, and we want to leverage that to take it to the next level.
Excellent. I think two keywords, right? One is collaborate and the second one is leverage. Now, of course, we don't want to replicate stuff. We really want to see how to work quite seamlessly across platforms. But one thing that often comes up is the concept of funding, which maybe I will pose it to our IFC friend here. Say, while there are many colors of capital available, time and time again we come up with this challenge where there is infrastructure available and there is potentially opportunities for deployment, but there is one critical gap in terms of grant capital at certain stages of a company. In a software which is a fast to iterate or some kind of company, it doesn't matter, but the kind of companies getting built here or the technology is being translated here, that is a real problem. I mean, is there some thoughts on how it's being addressed and how a platform like this could be leveraged to address that gap?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's quite a pertinent question, but I will also try to address the way that it's always not the fact that there is a ready technology or infrastructure available and then only the funding gap is there. It's an overall ecosystem play in most of the cases, and that's where we are seeing, yes, funding is a big issue, but at the same time, such platform needs to work very closely with the government, with the regulators, with the subnational entities to create policies and create the policies which are more certain and gives a long-term signal to the investors to come and participate in those breakthrough and disruptive technological areas. So we see these situations are cropping up in areas like carbon capture, utilization, storage, which is a very big, has a big way to contribute to the greenhouse gas emission reductions. This has a play in the green hydrogen, in electric vehicle, battery energy storage, and many other areas. Coming to your specific question on the grant capital, yes, I mean, this is a very much a controversial topic in a sense that whenever the issue comes up, there is always an expectation that probably the lot of grant would be moving from the multilateral organizations or the likes of international organization. Now, one thing we also need to understand that such capitals are gradually going down because of the overall the international circumstances, because a lot of these capitals are being contributed from the sovereign sources, and there is a changing priority of many of the countries who have been the traditional donors in these fronts. So we ourselves see, there is a lot of crunch on those capitals. Having said that, there are some of these specialized funds, which are operating globally. For example, the Clean Technology Fund or Climate Investment Funds, GEF. They have their different ways to fund some of these areas. Not everybody was focusing exclusively on the innovations, on the TRL 2 and 3, but every one of them have certain kitty which can be accessed for a more, the innovative and accessing on the pilots. The beauty of such platforms should also be to tap some of the other alternative instruments and alternative funds. For example, the philanthropic capital, which is today is a large proportion of the capital which is going into some of these areas. Funding through the crowdsourcing, through many other sources, and that's where probably the institutions like IFC or the World Bank may not play a direct role, but we can come up with the de-risking instruments which would be helpful for mobilizing this capital for the more innovative technologies. So we may not be able to directly contribute to TRL 2 and 3 because we deal with a lot of public money, and that proportion is also going down. But we have the instruments which will help the other investors to come in and invest in those type of projects.
Sure. Thank you, Ajay. Maybe I'll move to Raghu, who besides his current role at GDC has been through the financial world. Maybe Raghu, you can throw some light on how do you see this challenge being addressed in a platform like what we are trying to build?
So I think there are three barriers. When we don't need too much of money at the initial stage. The money that Mr. Bandyopadhyay talked about, is not commercial money. That's the reason why it's hesitating to come in, before TRL 3. So you need patient capital, you need philanthropic capital, you need, or returnable capital. If I can use a concept like that, which development agencies definitely have. Give it over 50 years, but pay it back. Right? So that we need to have mechanisms to channel all the three here to these. But I'm still saying there are two elephants in the room that we are missing. People fund equipment. People fund infrastructure. People will fund a lab. They will fund testing equipment. They'll fund wet labs, all kinds of other things. What innovation needs, in some small measure, 5-10% of that money actually goes to develop human capital. The capital to learn and fail. That is where even development money hesitates to come in. What are we financing? How do we finance failure? Innovation has failure written all over it. It's a bad word. Fail is a 4-letter word. But you have to accept it. For every one success, you will have 3 failures. How do you therefore treat failure? How do you recognize it? How do you learn from it? How do you make failures as good experiments and learn from it and embody that in financial decisions or investment? So that's one. The second is look at what we call human capital development. I'm not talking of soft skills. I'm talking of entrepreneurial thinking. That cannot be taught in a lecture. How do you make that? And that is one of the missing pieces in the starting point from lab to market. You have abundance of technology. You have abundance of capital waiting at the door. That valley of death has to be transcended by an entrepreneur or somebody who has that mindset that even if I fail, I'll get up and go with it. These are these missing elements that I think, one is the sources of capital which will look at this, 2, tolerate failures, fund what is invisible and intangible, and accept that we have to train this animal called entrepreneur who's probably inborn but needs to be kindled or rekindled to think like an entrepreneur. So there are 3 or 4 thoughts I'll throw here.
Thank you. It's a valid point where we somehow always want to close all projects as success, no matter where the funding comes from.
I think that mindset has to change.
However, much our field, we need to at least publish a paper and say we are done and take the best possible results and put it out. I agree with your point, but I still am curious. Maybe I'll push this back to Mirik to see you're trying to set up this IITRI research initiative, and you've been trying to also access a certain kind of capital. Now, can you probably say systematically if you are going to develop this? One of the call for action after a summit like this, and we had an offline chat before this, to say while there are a lot of startups coming in working on the periphery, we still are not seeing fundamental groundbreaking activity that will actually genuinely push this industry forward or the transition forward. And for that was the question I posed to say, where is the capital and what is your experience so far in trying to set this off the ground besides the Gogri Hub?
No, I think, look, our aim is to rally philanthropic capital. Obviously, we come from a vantage point that our family is saying that we are going to put certain amount of capital. So I think our discussions in that way are slightly different from someone just from a fundraising perspective. It's almost like come with us and join us in that way. Uh, I think we are still figuring it out, like what's the right partnerships and foundations both at a India level and an international level that we need to build so that this concept is sort of solidified. I'll tell you one interesting thing in this. When during my conversation with other potential funders and philanthropists, a couple of things have changed. Actually, what has changed, I think there are two things in my mind. The word is DeepSeek and BYD. I think psychologically, say from earlier this year to or before this year, I think there is a sudden realization in a lot of the people that we are actually far behind. I think the point earlier, some people knew that we are far behind from China, but I think suddenly now that realization amongst across the whole strata has gone up quite a lot, including when I talk to people in the bureaucracy and things like that, there's relatively open acknowledgement that look, we are far behind in that way. So I think there is some urgency which obviously can be tapped onto, that lot of funding and philanthropy we talked about still goes into building the primary schools and building the primary healthcare centers, which is important. But if you are able to transform even 5% of that into slightly upstream intervention, and I completely agree with a lot of the points. It's not, I don't think the question is throw money and solve the problem. I think that is an absolutely wrong approach. I think how do you treat some of this philanthropic capital, the philanthropists also need to change their mind. If their mindset is going down like an MIS approach that look, how much money you have spent in a month and where is my result and outcome, I don't think that it will work. So when we talk about mindset change, one of the roles that we also need to look at is how do you change the mindset of the givers? Because if your mindset traditionally was to give to schools and hospitals where the results were pretty tangible in terms of number of patients treated, here it will be subjective. There will be an element of failure and then there is a potential of slightly longer term success. So the early conversations have been good. We gotten a few commitments as well, but I think it is not going to be a easy road. Again, it's not an easy problem to solve, but we are quite cautiously optimistic is the word that I use. I think people are definitely more attuned to the fact that this is required, and all this Viksit Bharat dream that we have for 2047. I don't think if we are able to solve the industry academia bridge, it is a challenging dream to achieve. So.
Thanks, Mirik. I think that's clearly a challenge when we discuss, and it's also a challenge. I'll now push it to Nishani, where when we talk to alumni, a similar challenge exists because you want to fund scholarships, you want to fund underprivileged students, you want to fund initiatives that are, by the end of the year, you can show some nice outcome and say, you're done with this year, my karma for this year is done. Now, how do we translate that? And in your conversations, like, for example, you have conversations with multiple people, how do you see is the response to, when you go and ask, say, support research initiatives, we don't know what will happen, but we support a scholarship?
I think there are there are different kinds of alumni and different kinds of people in areas of their interest, right? There are a lot, I'm going to say majority of them want to see result, right? Majority of them want to know where my money was used, how my money was used, and what impact did it make, even if it was meant to plant a tree, right? So, but there are also a lot, and I think it's from the background that they come from, where they have larger visions to solve real society's problems that there are today. And I think there is, the percentage is low, but they do invest, and they understand that innovation comes with failure. It's a small percentage, but they do, and they willing to take that step forward and still put their soul and money to the projects that they have. I think they believe in the cause, and also it's the trust that the project or the center is able to sort of gain, right? And show what they can do.
Sure. Now, thank you so much. I'm happy to hear that people are now starting to looking beyond that small bit. So now that money is out of the way, let's go to the second problem that we generally face in a platform like this. While it's easier to address problems that show incremental movements, but there are problems that requires fundamental rethink. And DeepSeek is an example, but there are many other problems that we are afraid to touch because it certainly requires a lot more effort, and we don't know how long we are going to be in the dredges for. Now, Raghu, I want to ask this question. Now you've interacted with 150 institutions, probably at least about 1,000 investigators or faculty researchers.
Correct.
Now, what's the sense you get? Are they willing to tackle hard problems?
Two things. I find, it's a very difficult question you've asked. I find ambition is lacking. I really find people want to solve, most people want to solve simple problems. The people who really want to tackle the hard ones and say, let's reach for 100 crore proposal, really, really hard to find. And I think it's lack of ambition or they've not been challenged. I don't know where the problem lies. But I would definitely think that's an area where IIT, Bombay, Madras, all the old IITs, IISc must pull its weight. I don't know where else it will come from. So this is one. Second, I find corporate Aarti Industries is a rare exception. Okay, I think we need some more in that category to come forward, right? We would like to come and say, really partner. I mean, to talk of industry, academia, partnerships. Take what I call returnable capital. Take a 5-year view and fund a project and see how innovation can take shape. I think that kind of open innovation is something that we need to start doing. Whether it's on hard research, whether it's commercialization or anything in between. I think these two areas is where both industry and academia are a little behind, I would think, expectations.
Yeah. No, certainly. I think that's a feeling we all get. This is the 4th CLIMAFIX, and we're starting to get that feeling that we need to go deeper into our problem space and necessarily into a solution space. But Ajay, from your experience, you've looked at multiple countries and probably worked with institutions like ours. So what do you think is, from your perspective, some of the fundamental differences that drives the behavior where we are?
No, I completely agree with Raghu that the overall scale of ambition, I think, is definitely one big factor, and it also depends on what ecosystem an university or an institution is operating in. I mean, when you look at the US or even now the way that China has come up is a very thriving ecosystem where it's not just about the academic institution or a research institution, but the whole industry, academia, venture cap, the financial institutions, test bed, accelerators, and also a very big support by the government. And I think this is another aspect which again and again I would like to come, that industry always responds to incentives, and the incentives are created to a large extent by the government. If there are the long-term uncertainty in the policy environment, be it sustainability, net zero and all that, industries won't respond, and that too in a developing world where industries are or large corporates are also under the multiple pressures in an open economic system. So doing an advocacy with the government through the large institutions is very, very important. And that needs to be aligned with the government's overall goals and plan. But I think more or less the research shows, and when we are also engaging with some of the biggest innovation hubs across the world, be it US, Israel, even in Russia or now in China, Southeast Asia. So the whole approach is definitely to build that ecosystem in place. And unless that ecosystem is built in a more effective, robust, and innovative fashion, the success of the individual institutions or the platform becomes very, very uncertain.
Yeah, certainly. I think it takes many more to tango. Maybe switching to a slightly positive note, we'll start with Mirik maybe. What are the good things you are seeing now that, again, going back to your current new experience, trying to put together this ecosystem and the platform, what are the good things you are seeing you think we should be able to leverage on?
I'll come to that. I think one interesting thing I was just thinking as you were saying. So in mathematics in 1900, David Hilbert, which is a German mathematician, and he actually set out the problems. So one of the things we are asking people to be more ambitious, one of the guiding lights can be, he, I think, set out like 17 problem in maths, which laid the foundation for research for maths for the next 50 years. So one of the call to actions, even from maybe the IITs and IIS, is maybe have to be what are the 20 big ambitious problems say, related to energy? Can be a call to action to people. So I'm just leaving it out there.
Certainly the bugs, right? The big, airy, audacious
So
goals.
as in, what are those? As in, like, and sometimes it's good that it comes out from a reputed institution. Look, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And then that institution can work with the people, because if people are surrounded by incremental innovations, then they will think around that. Can I innovate on this? But if they know, okay, that there is a COP greater than 9 technology existing potentially, then they start thinking. So maybe that's the thing. I think for me, the biggest thing is, from an industry, the sheer unawareness of the research that is going on is so high. Even for me, even though I am so involved in R&D for so many years, like IIT Madras, I started visiting like 2 years ago. And now when I'm talking to people who are like running $1 billion enterprises, completely unaware of a lot of the work that is going on. So to the point that the discovery aspect is now starting to happen. So in a way, the positive in my mind as I think about it is, look, if we just are able to unearth the information that is happening there and have a strong connect at the right level at the industry. So one of the things about industry connect is, if you're not connected at the right decision maker level, it sort of goes on a toss. I know that internally it's always a challenge. So even if you're able to unearth the right problem statement to the right industry, it has to have some heavy touch lifting. I don't think the whole approach about just putting all the paper of IIT Madras in patents on a website will solve it. It has to require some sort of going down the ground into the ditches to solve it. But I see almost that as a positive. In the 6 months, I would have at least realized 5 or 7 disconnects, which can potentially lead to transformation. So I think that's a pretty positive, because once people understand the level of research going on, there is a expectation, there is a shock. ये होता है इंडिया में क्या? I'll tell you. That has been a discussion with many people that has happened, and that's I think a thing for us to capture.
I think that's a sad state, though. Though we wish
I look at the opportunity. I agree, it's a sad state.
No, but I
can
look
solve
at it as
it.
positive, because we have so much opportunity. But that's saying,
What it is right now, it's like shocking.
yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. So maybe we'll last round of thoughts, starting with Nishani, to say we are putting out this platform, and our objective is with CLIMAFIX, with the Energy Consortium, with I3, with GDC, all these initiatives that we are doing is to make research to translation prominent and become drivers of entrepreneurship and next generation wealth creation of the country. And this platform is supposed to be that. And if you want to say, from your perspective, from each of your perspective, I'll start with you, but then all of us, what is that one thing that you think the platform should embed right from the design phase so that it'll help you?
I'm just going to lay one thought on Mirik on what he said. I think the platforms or the centers need to also sort of, I think what lack of awareness is definitely there. And I think little marketing and outreach, for even research is now, I think the day and age for even that is sort of, become. I think if it's one thing that's there on a platform like this, I think it should be able to sort of be selfless and do a lot of knowledge sharing. And I think knowledge sharing with anyone across the world, with anyone in the hierarchy structure. And I think that would be one way that you can also gain and also give to society.
Ajay?
Yeah, I think a couple of points. So one, of course, when you prioritize on the research items through this platform, it's important to start adopting certain design thinking principles so that you don't really end up in doing research which doesn't have the market short-term or even medium-term. If something is long-term, that's a very different kind of problems you are trying to address. So taking those feedback as the researchers go along, and how the market responds to some of those things would be important. I think awareness is very critical, because I think the industry community or the entrepreneurial community as well as the whole financial community is most of the time completely unaware of many of these new innovations. And last but not the least, I think some connect with the global innovation ecosystem is very important. I mean, whether, there are some of the innovation system which are closely guarded, which are open, but I think that's the thing which with the IIT's strength, with the Pan IIT and many other associations together can leverage and maneuver so that, the researchers don't end up in reinventing the wheels which are there, and tap the advancement of the global ecosystem in a much more effective fashion.
Certainly, I think that's a valid point. We generally have this whole thing is not invented here. That has to be done with, and we really pick on what others have done. Raghu, your thoughts?
Slightly contrarian. I think a technology platform should put out qualified, trained entrepreneurs, failed entrepreneurs, have a mechanism for throwing them. This is the biggest shortage. It's not shortage of capital. It's not shortage of research. It is shortage of entrepreneurs who understand science and understand how to take or build organizations. If we can have this platform also enable a search for qualified, tried and failed entrepreneurs, I think we would do well.
I think qualified, tried and failed X, it can be entrepreneurs, it can be researchers, whatever that may be. It's definitely a need for people who have the gumption to try again. That's certainly there. Mirik, your thoughts?
I think just reflecting on the whole panel, I think the balance of short-term wins versus bold long-term research becomes critical because, and that's the reality, because if you are too short-term oriented, then you are never going to take those audacious bets. If you become too long-term oriented, then your support, there's a chance of the support evaporating. So how do you engage with potential partners? And it can be funders or other, sometimes it's not only funders, it's about, say, your co-inventor or something like that for everyone. So how do you take that balance and guidance on that? Like how do you achieve, like one of the companies couple of companies that we are working in who have a vision on the fusion side. So their goal is audacious, but they realize that revenue is important in that case. So how do you monetize say subsystem technology to get it there? So I am just trying to think that the bigger vision and what are the pathways, and that's almost like an entrepreneurial play and entrepreneurial guidance more than anything else. So maybe the platform needs to figure out the balance and teach them to the entrepreneurs as they are building this audacious.
Excellent. I think I agree with you. So both the audacious goals and the incremental, which keeps people engaged and not just make it a lot of air. Wonderful. Thank you all so much. I think we've heard excellent suggestions for the platform, including the outlook, forward-looking statements, building a community of entrepreneurs who feel safe to experiment, fail, and continue to contribute, being connected to the innovation network across the world so that you don't keep reinventing the same stuff and build on each other's gains that we have made, and keep it an open community and open sharing platform so that we richly benefit from contributions from multiple people. Thank you a lot. There's a lot of work to do. We hope to act on some of these as we go along, and I'm certainly keen on putting out some of those discussions into practice. I will leverage upon each of you to help me in that endeavor. With that, I would like to thank all our panelists here. You've been really great. Thank you so much, and looking forward to engage.
Thank you.
Thank you all for
I think a very, very interesting panel discussion. But I must add here my thoughts in a minute, that I don't think, coming from the industry, I think all of us know about the IIT Research Park. It's not that we are not aware. I'm here despite I had a very busy schedule, and Narsi called me and I said that let's me go there because I'm aware of the fantastic work that's happening. I am also an IIT Bombay alumni actually. But we are all aware, and I think the industry is actually now realizing a large part, at least, I would not say like the 80% of industry, but I would say somewhere a good part of industry is realizing the need to work more and more with, actually it's more with startups and innovators rather than with the academia, I would say. But probably since the academia is now getting integrated with the startup ecosystem in a big way, I think it's kind of accelerating this this tree union of academia, startups, government. In fact, yesterday we had, there was a very big R&D enclave at Delhi where the ministry, MNRE called about, they honored about 25 startups in green hydrogen. And so I think we are reaching there somewhere. But good to see the thoughts here.